we have a planetary update from the GFL. It's about a kind of sentiment shift that they, and by they I really mean us, have been experiencing. And I don't want to make this sound too much like there's a direct cause and effect, because this is really a chicken and the egg type of thing. Everything is part of a bigger flow. Everything is going hand in hand. Because there is a certain way of looking at this where we kind of fall into this thinking that there is some type of organization that is like really controlling us. And that's not how I see this. It's more about there are different layers of the expression of our own consciousness that tend to flow and evolve and shift all in tandem. So we can look at different layers, and that just helps us understand the bigger picture here. So this sentiment shift, what it's really about, and like the point of this video, is that the guardrails are coming off, the training wheels are coming off. And so in a sense, that does mean that certain safety measures are being removed. This means, that there are less protective controls, and I at least see this as an extremely positive and dramatically overdue event. And it's not so much of like a one-off event, although it's a sentiment shift. It's the sentiment that has been shifting. Okay, this sentiment that has been shifting. And so one way of looking at this is in the GFL, there are many, many millions of voices, and these voices, they group together like different parts of a choir. In a choir you have soprano, alto, tenor, bass, etc. In the GFL, there's all these different groups of all these millions of voices, and two of the kind of largest groups would be what we could call a masculine group and a feminine group. And recently in the GFL, the feminine voices have really enjoyed a very important resurgence and a lot of growth. But whenever anything grows and expands and kind of has a renaissance, eventually there needs to be a course correction. There needs to be a correction, a balancing of the energy. So what has essentially happened is that the GFL choir, if you can tune in and you can just hear the choir, hear the voices, hear the frequencies, where the feminine energy became very loud, and now that's rebalancing a little bit. The pendulum is kind of shifting back, and that is part of why we are having the training wheels coming off, the protective measures coming off, because one thing that happens when feminine energy gets too loud, or just too much of it, when the pendulum shifts too far in that particular direction, is that it's not so much the like controlling, as in like the patriarchal control, but we get feminine control that comes in a different type of way, where it becomes, it's like control that comes from overprotectiveness and overly nurturing, and also like too much fusion, too much bonding, and there can be a lack of independence. And so as I'm talking about this, you're really going to be able to feel into, we could talk about this in terms of a family, right? That's a really easy analogy here. That's a good human analogy for these broader energies, where so essentially in the galactic family, the mothering energy has become, especially in terms of what's been going on Earth, like the energetic structures of Earth, the mothering energy has become a bit overprotective and overly nurturing. And it's not that was really a problem. It's that it's just important that now that begins to recede. And think, if the GFL in this case has been the parent, or really in this case the mother, and Earth has been the child, at this point it's that the child has grown to a certain stage in its development that now the child is old enough to do that on the child's own, right? They're old enough to do it on their own now. They're old enough to do it on their own. And of course, whenever we're discussing, right, is a child old enough to do this on their own? Is Earth old enough to do this on their own? Is humanity old enough to do this on their own? Everyone's going to have a different opinion on exactly where that age is, like where is that threshold. So that's something that, people can argue about and endlessly discuss, but there's definitely this feeling of, okay, now it is time for the mother to say, they're old enough to do this on their own now. And that means the training wheels come off. That means some of the supervision comes off. And that means allowing the child out into the world on their own to grow freely, and especially to be out from the thumb of the supervision, right? To have unsupervised activity. And so, you can think about how this plays out in terms of family dynamics. And this is happening like literally on a planetary scale, where the GFL, where there was a lot of very mothering, very nurturing energy that became, that was kind of pushed to the uttermost extent. And now like literally some of the supervision and the nurturing and the protectiveness, it's coming off of the planet. And I mean this in like a literal energetic like way. For the whole planet and for the whole human collective. It's looking like humanity doesn't need so much supervision at this stage of its development, right? And some of the training wheels and the guard rails and the that stuff, it's time for it to come off, and the pendulum swings back to more balance. And it's not like the feminine energy is going anywhere. It's actually going to settle back down into a more healthy and sustainable state. And again, the human family analogy works well, because when you think, when mothers have small children, that is an utterly, completely consuming experience, right? The mothering of small children is like like literally constant, every moment of the day experience. But of course, there comes a time when the children reach whatever age you think that is, where the mother now can regain some of her own freedom. She regains her own time. She regains her own freedom. So this is actually very healthy and restorative to the mothering and feminine energy here. And what it means for the GFL essentially is that they get to turn their attention to some other matters, and it's actually freeing up energy. So this is really good and healthy across the board. And you might be like, along with this kind of comes this like return of the divine, this return of the divine masculine as well, because now there is room for it. I'm just like, the example of the human family is a mother sending her kids off with a father figure, right? And she's watching them go, and she's like, well, I don't know if he's gonna take care of them exactly the way I would take care of them. Like, is it gonna be okay? And and she's nervous, but she knows it's gonna be okay, and it's gonna be a good experience for all involved, right? But there's that feeling of like nervousness. So there's this rebalancing of these family dynamics essentially, but this is happening, I mean, like literally on a interplanetary level. And this is going to be really good for our individual human lives. We're definitely going to be feeling the shift in these dynamics in our personal lives. And you could be easily, and I would say it's likely for all of us to be feeling this on both sides, right? You might feel yourself, or really on all three sides, or however many sides you can think of here. You might feel yourself as the mother learning to go, okay, like, the training wheels can come off, right? They're old enough to do this on their own, and they're old enough to do something without my supervision, right? Allowing, it doesn't have to be your actual children, right? It can be some other type of energy that you are like allowing to go freely into the world, right? Without your control and without your nurturing, without your supervision. You could definitely feel that coming up for you. I think you're also going to be feeling, and this is more to the point of this message, right? More to the point of this message is how we're going to be feeling that feeling of being the quote unquote child that has been freed, right? No more of that supervision, no more of the constant supervision, no more of the kind of constant control. And some, because some might really really miss the feeling of like, because with this certain, you might miss your training wheels, right? Certain structures that have supported you might dissolve, right? So there is that, certain structures that have supported you might dissolve, but just think about it. It's literally when the training wheels come off, you don't need those anymore, right? You don't need those supportive structures anymore. And you're going to be, better and stronger and more free and more capable and moving off into more growth since those training wheels come off. But I think specifically for you guys, right? Those of you who mysteriously found this video out of all of the things you could be looking at on the internet, how did you even find this video? I think this is going to feel like, by and large, for the bulk of this experience for you is going to be like this feeling of, holy shit, finally, like finally I'm out from under this smothering structure, right? It's the feeling of the smothering is no longer happening. And because you guys have been caught up in essentially protective structures that were designed to create guidance, provide protection, and also like to funnel growth down specific types of avenues, the way a teacher might guide a pupil. You guys have been, like, literally you had really no choice but to exist on a planet and within a human collective that was subjected to these structures, and we were like the human collective was subjected to these structures for good reason. But for some souls, those protective and guidance structures, they were never really necessary for you in particular, because you came to this planet already with your soul. Like, you didn't need those protective structures, right? You never needed them. So your experience as a human has kind of been one of, why are there so many restraints all around me? And these are restraints that are irrelevant to me. And that has caused all kinds of dysfunction and difficulty. It's like, imagine if you woke up tomorrow and you were back in kindergarten, but you weren't like a 4-year-old, you were an adult trapped inside of a child's body, and now you had to like literally do all of the things expected of you in kindergarten. That would be, I mean, maybe with your wisdom you could find a way to like enjoy your childhood, right, with knowing all that you know now, but also sometimes I'm sure it would feel completely ridiculous, and some of you especially would just go almost insane having like being trapped inside of that experience, right? So your experience of life on Earth has been that, and the more the more you know that is you, the more you're going to really appreciate and enjoy this removal of the protective structures, because you never needed them in the first place. And it will be this massive sense of relief, like finally finally you have that sense of agency that that should have been there for you the whole time. Like there was some like these protective structures were interfering with your own agency. And this is where we might talk about liberation or freedom, but instead of using those words, I want to focus more on the word agency, right? This is more about your own agency. The Six of Pentacles has been haunting. And so what's interesting is that the removal of these protective structures is actually going to allow new connections, right? Just like a parent might say, no, I don't want you to talk to that person. I don't want you to associate with that person. For all of the reasons a parent might say that. But then when you get old enough, you can associate with the people of your own choosing, right? So when the protective structures come off, there's going to be new connections available to you. And for you guys, it's like you're not going to have any issues. Like, that's not going to be a dangerous thing for you, because you know who's good for you and who's not, right? You never needed someone to tell you who to talk to, right? You never needed that. Maybe somebody else needed that, but you never needed that. So this is actually just going to open up this avenue for new partnerships and new connections. And it's going to feel like these connections are kind of cross connecting, right? Meeting people, from just different realities, right? Meeting people from completely different realities. And like the more you talk to people, the more you kind of realize that, at least the more I talk to people, the more I get the impression that every single person is living in a completely unique reality. And there are people out there living in realities that I have never even really considered or know anything about. So we're going to be able to cross connect with people from different realities, and it's going to be quite interesting. So this is opening up the energetic field to a new type of mixing of energies. And so with that, you will be connecting with energy, like connecting with people, like specifically people, but or just energies in general. But there could be a lot of like one-off, right? One-off. There's like a lot of kind of testing and sampling. Don't necessarily expect every connection you make to be like the one that lasts forever, right? There's definitely a feeling here of like connecting very briefly, because it's part of the mixing, okay? It's part of the mixing. 10 of Wands. That the culmination of the burden, right? The moment where you put the burden down and you realize that the burden was not an arbitrary burden. The burden was a harvest. You were burdened by what you had harvested, right? That's how I always see the 10 of Wands is, imagine you're a farmer, and right, and this is, imagine you're a farmer before modern technology, and you literally have to carry your harvest in on your back, right? You literally have to carry your harvest in on your back. So your harvest and the work of harvesting is a huge burden, but the burden is your harvest, right? That weight that you were carrying, now you get to put it down and then you get to eat it, right? So this is the moment of the burden turning into the harvest. And there's definitely a feeling here of something that you were creating or training for, something you have been preparing or preparing for, that you may have completely overlooked it. You didn't even notice that you were doing it. Like it was just completely underneath your radar. Perhaps like like, I don't know, maybe some like game you play compulsively on your phone, right? Just as an example, like you compulsively playing this game, and maybe you even thought it was maybe a little bit of a problem, and then one day you realize that like you're one of the best people at this game in the world, and you never even noticed because you were never competitive, you were never trying to be good at it, you were just kind of playing it as a compulsive thing, and then you realize like, whoa, I could actually be like, I could compete. I'm competitive in this game, and maybe there's even maybe you can even win money doing that. Or maybe you can just have fun winning, like competing in tournaments. It's like you never even realized you were getting so good at something, and then that in and of itself opens up new opportunities. Or, same thing with any kind of creative project you've been doing, anything you just do kind of for yourself, you just create, you just write, whatever it is that you're doing, and then suddenly like bam, you realize, well, people actually like want this, I can actually share this with people. Or even relationships where you could look at your friend one day and realize that you've been in love with them for years, and they've been in love with you for years, and you're like, oh my god, how did we never like realize this? And something that was right under your nose this whole time, but it was just, you never noticed it. And the beautiful thing about that is it had to be subconscious like that. It had to be hidden even from you, even though you were doing it like almost every day and you've been doing it consistently and constantly for years and years and years. It was actually important that you weren't aware of what you were doing. It was really important because that allowed you to build that up. It's something like, if you had been consciously aware of like trying to get good at that thing, or really trying to make this thing happen, or really trying to establish this relationship, if you've been consciously aware of trying, then that brings in all of like, now that brings in so much, potentially problematic material, right? Where you're thinking about it, you're getting frustrated, you're going, why isn't this getting me anywhere, right? So you know how it is, right? When you're working on something for a long time and you're working on it consciously, you're really subjected to frustration, sometimes despair, right? And you doubt and you question and you wonder, and it can be just a lot of emotional baggage attached to the process. But if you're doing something like compulsively or subconsciously, and you've just kind of been doing this for years, then and you're not even aware of it, well, that is a really important mechanism that we use to prepare for something for the future without even realizing that we're doing it. And it allows us to do it in a more pure way, because the mind is not involved in this constant meta commentary on the process. So really, something could just like poof into existence because you've actually been doing it all along. You've been preparing for it all along. So you don't it could just like hit you in the face one day, like really, really unexpected. Eight of Cups. As I was shuffling for that, I was just thinking about the Artemis missions. There was just a group of humans. Like, I'm recording this just a little while after the Artemis 2 splashdown. That was like a week ago or a little while ago. Is within the recent past. So, there were just humans that spent a few minutes on the dark side of the moon, right? There were just some humans that spent a few minutes on the dark side of the moon. And, and they got there, not because some aliens came and picked them up, not because they astral traveled, but they got there because humans built a rocket and lit a fire and blasted themselves off and actually did it completely under their own power. Right? Pretty cool. It's pretty cool. But that moment of being beyond the dark side of the moon and being completely cut off from the rest of humanity, right? Those moments of pure isolation. Like, how you interpret that actually says a lot about you, right? How do you interpret that? What does that feel like to you? Would you like to spend a few minutes on the dark side of the moon? Would you like to have that kind of experience of being completely removed, completely separated, completely isolated? Would you like to have that experience? How does that feel for you? How does that make you feel, right? There's going to be a whole spectrum of reactions to that feeling. For some people that could be like a feeling of cosmic horror. For others, that could be the moment of complete relief and like a restoration to how things actually should be. And you can think about your child or your energetic child, right? What does the child symbolize? If you don't have children, or your children are already older or they're too young, right? What does the child symbolize for you? What is your energetic child? If you let that go and they go out of your supervision, they go out of your line of sight and you cannot communicate with them, how does that make you feel? Right? How does that make you feel? So feel into being on both sides of this, being the one who is having a moment of perfect freedom, perfect isolation. All the words that you use here, each one has a different connotation, and the words that you choose to use will kind of color it, right? But so think about being the one on the dark side of the moon, and think about being part of the group who is still interconnected. Think about being on both sides of that, and just feel into how you feel about that. But all of this comes with a greater purpose, right? Because this is about moving into the future. It's about moving into the future. And this little moment of the releasing of the control and the releasing of the constant supervision and the removing of the training wheels, right? This moment of that, which for some, again, could be a massive fear-facing moment, and for others could be a moment of the absolute restoration of pure agency. So, depending on how this is hitting for you. And it could be both at the same time, right? Or both in different contexts. Think about what this means for your life moving forward. Think about what this means for the human collective moving into the future, right? Moving into the future. We got the Starman, so that would be the Magician, and the Princess of Cups. This is like, they're saying like making love, right? This is about making love, which of course can mean sex, but it also means the generation of more, like the generation of more love, literally creating more love, The Compass card flopped out. I had that from last time. Movement, flying, and solitude. That did come out in reverse, if you want to take that into your interpretation. Free flying. This is because I was already talking about that isolation, or the solitude. That is that moment of being away from the supervision. That is the moment of being on the dark side of the moon. Free flying. What I'm seeing is a person needing to create so much space for themselves, or a person who has created so much space for themselves that was like their way of clearing the runway. Okay, so you have created enough space for yourself that you have cleared the runway. You needed to create the solitude. You needed to create the space in order to clear the runway so that now you can run and blast off, right? It's like you needed a runway to run up. Instead of just, exploding upwards, it's more of a plane taking off on this like long runway and then blasting off and being able to fly freely. Right? And especially now that the training wheels have come off, the restraints have come off, the supervision has been removed, right? Or the eye that watches has been, I want to say clarified, right? The eye that watches has been clarified, because the eye that watches, okay, the watcher, the supervisor, right? The supervisor, in a way, this is also restoring agency and freedom to the supervisor, right? Because just like a mother shouldn't have to constantly a mother should not have to be in constant management of her children, right? You might be for a period of time, but that is simply not sustainable for a lifetime. And there comes the moment where the mother needs to be restored to her own agency, and that actually means getting space from her children. So literally this moment of like the supervisor, there's this thing about like the supervisor and the agent, right? The supervisor and the agent. The supervisor is also having agency restored, because the supervisor no longer needs to be constantly watching and constantly correcting, right? The supervisor no longer needs to be constantly correcting what is going on. And you're going to be feeling this in your life, where, and I mean, some of you will have already like resolved this shift. Some of you might have to like really dry yourself off. Like I'm seeing like somebody like emerging from like a tar pool, like literal tar. So some people just kind of sprang out of the water and shook themselves off and like were off to the races. Other people, they're kind of like pulling themselves out of the ooze, like pulling themselves out of the tar, and the tar is like sticking to them, and they need to kind of really spend some time like cleaning themselves off and like breaking the umbilical cord, right? like freeing themselves from the tar. the sticky residue. You know, this is all happening a little differently for everyone. So everyone's in a different kind of spot with this, but you've already noticed this, or you are beginning to notice that it's no longer about the universe or reality constantly teaching you lessons, right? Because in our very recent era, the bulk of our spiritual experience was about, what lesson am I learning today? What is the universe trying to teach me? What is this? How is reality reflecting to me? Like, what is it showing me? What am I supposed to learn from this? When this thing happened, why did it happen? And what was I supposed to learn from it, right? There was this almost like constant, right? It was like a constant feeling of reality is trying to teach me something, and I'm trying to learn what reality is trying to teach me. I'm constantly trying to learn. I'm constantly trying to and think about it. I mean, were we trying to learn, or were we trying to change ourselves and adapt ourselves to please and appease reality, right? And again, there's a spectrum there of interpretation, and all of it is part of it. It's all part of it. It's all part of it, right? Yes, we were trying to learn, and yes, that learning process was extremely important. We had soul lessons to learn. We were learning about the nature of reality. We're learning about our relationship with the universe, all of these things, and we had a lot to learn, and we did learn a lot. But that kind of spiritual view, right? That spiritual view, it is a particular type of spiritual view that comes from certain traditions and certain energies, right? Like the spiritual view that says reality is constantly mirroring yourself back to you so that you can see yourself in the external reality and therefore like learn to be better and to hopefully create the reflections that you want to see by changing yourself internally. You know, that whole philosophy, I mean, that is real and it is part of what is, but it is not all that there is to reality, and it is not the only game being played. That perspective, it is one very important, very significant perspective, but like if we wanted to get astrological about it, I would call that the Pisces perspective. So that essentially, that whole worldview, that whole spiritual view essentially belonged to, well, it belongs to your Pisces placements, right? It belongs to your Pisces placements, and it belongs to like your Neptune placement, and it belongs to the era what we just lived through of Neptune in Pisces, right? But we're done with that now, but of course it's not like we're done with it forever, because Pisces energy, of course, isn't going anywhere. It's still here. Many people have Pisces placements. There will be transits going through Pisces. The moon goes through Pisces every month, right? We have Pisces season every year. It's still happening. It's not like going anywhere, but it is receding. That is receding. That is no longer the kind of dominant thing. Instead of it now there's this feeling of almost like it's this feeling of it feels agentic, right? It feels agentic. It feels agentic. And it feels like now I can stand against reality and go, reality is doing that shit and I'm doing this. And it's this feeling of actually being separate from reality. It's like we have now individuated from the external reality. Instead of being completely blended with it or completely dissolved into it, we are now individuated in the face of reality. This is like completely next level individuation, not just as a soul, but literally as an embodied human, to stand against reality. You know, it doesn't have to be against reality, but to stand and look at reality. And this is when we say, this is what I'm doing. And there are all kinds of things you might find yourself feeling, and trust these feelings, because you might find yourself saying to someone else or to reality itself, right? And this might come up a lot with your interactions with others, especially interactions that you might have with people if they're kind of tense, like little small conflicts throughout the day, the kind of bickering that can go on in a household or among friends, right? A kind of small bickering. You might find yourself going like, hey, look, I was not being unreasonable. That was not an unreasonable thing for me to do. I was not wrong. It was not wrong of me to do that or to think that. It was fine. I'm not even saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying that I wasn't wrong. Like, these are the kind of thoughts that you're going to be having. Like, and those thoughts are going to replace, right? They're replacing. It used to be, oh my God, what am I supposed to learn from this thing that just happened? And how was that thing reflecting myself, right? How is this a mirror? We're no longer really looking into the mirror anymore. Okay. There are still mirrors, and we will still sometimes look into the mirror, and all of that stuff about the mirror, it's still real, but it's no longer really the emphasis of what we're constantly doing, right? Unless you happen to be like a Pisces stellium person who like completely lives in that space. Those people still, of course, exist. But for most of us, it's going to be, we might sometimes look in the mirror. We're not constantly looking in the mirror. And so there's going to be a lot more of just like, where in the past, when something happened, you might have really gone into massive over-analysis, and you might have been spiritualizing it and trying to understand why and what and how and what am I supposed to do with this, right? The whole like cascade of the whole cascading thing. But now you're kind of, with your agency, just kind of not engaging in that because it's not what's really relevant right now. And now it's just kind of like, I wasn't being unreasonable. What I did was fine. What I'm doing is fine. Everything is fine. This is what I'm doing. And that's it. Right? Like that's the kind of feeling here. And that's how you're going to be launching, right? That's how you're launching. And this is even like, okay, like in your professional or creative life, when you receive feedback about something you've created, of course, it's like you're all reasonable people. Of course, you're going to be happy to receive feedback that is functional for you. You might go, oh yeah, that feedback, that was really good feedback. That gave me a good idea. Now I know I can like make some revisions, or I can make changes for next time I do this. And like, that was really helpful. So feedback is still helpful, right? Feedback is still relevant, but there's also going to be so many moments where you get feedback and you just look at this feedback and you go, okay, well, I do kind of see why they said that. I do kind of see why they said that, because, but then you're also going to be like, well, but also I don't really care about any of that. Right? I don't really care about any of that, because maybe the feedback comes from some outdated system or some outdated way of thinking. It's like, and you go, okay, well, I get that that's how you're supposed to do it. And I get that's what people always say. And I get that that is part of the consensus and that is part of the rules, but you're not really going to care about that. And you're going to go, well, you know what? Maybe I have a new way of doing this. Maybe I have a different way of doing this. And maybe it's fine to break those rules. Maybe it's fine to do it differently. And if they don't like it, then they don't like it. But I am going to be doing what I am doing because I trust that it's fine for me to be doing it this way, right? And okay, so to bring this back to like the planet in general, on the bigger picture here, this is where humanity's growth, like there are still some like safety nets in place. There are still some like guardians and guidance lines. It's not like things have gone into complete chaos or to complete anarchy. It's that some of the training wheels have gone off, right? Some of the supervision is being lifted. And that means that humanity is going to start to evolve and like permutate and express itself in very interesting ways. And it's going to be in ways that like humanity is kind of destined to constantly surprise the rest of the galaxy. Okay, humanity is destined to constantly surprise the rest of the galaxy. And we do have like other, galactic beings and collectives who look at us and they still don't understand us, and they still don't understand like what's going on here or what we're doing. And that's just going to there's just going to be more of that, because humanity is going to continue to be strange and weird and wonderful. And the important thing is that we continue to embrace that as much as we can, because this is literally about humanity taking its place like at the universal table, right? This is how humanity finds its place in the universe. And humanity is going to be, or already is on a higher level, right? Something that nobody expected, right? Something that nobody expected. So I'm going to leave you guys there. Sending you so much love and light. I'll talk to you later. Bye.